Leafy shrubs can be a real challenge to draw. Well, leafy anything can be a challenge to draw. But it's a subject that's a great example of a technique of drawing the effect of detail, not drawing the actual detail, which is where we draw enough of the detail in a prominent enough way so that anyone looking at the object will hopefully instantly or very quickly realize what it is. But we won't get bogged down with drawing all of the detail to the same degree over the whole drawing. We'll try and find marks that can be drawn more quickly, more generally, which will still suggest something of the underlying form and the lights and darks that are on it in those conditions. So you see me starting with doing some of the more detailed parts, which is going to take a little bit more time, but will be important to give hopefully a fairly instant understanding of what we're looking at. The danger with doing this is that we don't know when to stop and we start to draw every leaf. And ironically, when we draw every leaf or every whatever the detail is, brick, roof tile, the overall result can actually look less realistic than when we only draw some of it in that detail and suggest the rest. So you can see I've done a few hatch lines already. That's to remind me that I'm going to be adding values in a fairly imprecise way into these spots, and it's to help encourage me to start thinking of marks that aren't leaf outlines. Now, I actually managed to mess up where I was looking at in the drawing. So what looks like it's the top of the shrub in the photo is actually further down in terms of what I've drawn in my drawing, if that makes any sense. But in some ways, that was a helpful thing because it actually freed me from paying or being tempted to pay too much attention to the bush too exactly. When I draw foliage, I do like to try and approximately copy the overall shapes of the large picture shapes of the canopies, of the foliage, of the way the lights and darks play across it, because I've usually chosen that foliage because I like how it looks in this particular instance. But having messed up where I was drawing on the paper but lining up in my reference, I decided it was a great example, a great opportunity rather to just keep pushing on and be even less worried about exactly matching up the drawing with the photo. And you can see here now what I'm doing. There are two things I'm really working on now, or three things. I guess I continue to try and draw some leaves in detail, and not just the leaves, but the way the leaves attach together. So there is this starburst effect, but we've got to be careful that we don't draw it as if we're looking straight down on all of these hands of leaves, as I was thinking of them, that we're looking quite horizontally at some of them, particularly higher up, and lower down we're looking more on them, but not by any means are we looking flat onto them. So I need to be reflecting that as well when I do draw these hands of leaves in more detail. And in the reference, a lot of the way we really see them is in the values, the darknesses that are behind them. But we're also, as well as paying attention to draw some of the detail clearly and in a fairly prominent way so that the brain can recognize that easily. Also with the silhouette edges, trying to make quite clear what we're looking at. Now, I've decided I'm not going to draw any of the background of this shrub, that we'll just keep it a drawing of the shrub. And that does affect the way I draw it, because if I were drawing that darker background behind, I would be paying more attention to the silhouette and probably feeling the need to put even less detail in terms of the leaves I'm drawing there, because the silhouette would provide that information. And now I'm moving across to the other side. I'm drawing this with a 0.5 3mm pen, and it's certainly in the second half of its ink life. So it's a fairly fine line to do something like this at this size. And looking at the edges that I've drawn, now that I'm progressing across to the second half of the drawing, the subject, I'm going to start to pay more attention to how dark my darks are and trying to provide more variety of dark. What I want to do is suggest that when we look into the dark spaces between the less dark, more carefully drawn leaves, that there is still a hint of leaves moving back into further darkness through various shades of value from lighter to darker. And there are some little parts where there aren't any leaves where we're seeing a lot more shadow being cast in those spots. So it's always continuing to create variety of marks and variety of values. And how would you be planning on doing just the ground in front of the bush with all the leaf litter, the dead leaf litter there? Because we also want to create marks that introduce clarity to our scene, that introduce clarity that might come from lines going in different directions or lines closer together so we create darker values, or lines crossed over the top to bring a different visual effect that will help separate it from a part of our scene that's close by and and of similar value. Changing line direction to try and create clarity and variation is I think a constant part of doing foliage. You can see me now establishing some more prominent lines, more prominent leaves rather, further down. And now I'm in much more of a rhythm now. This is the sort of subject where it can take a little while to get the hang of it. So at the start, I go as slow as I need to, but as the tempo picks up, as I start to become more familiar both with the subject and how I'm drawing it, I deliberately try and pick up the speed. And I find the fact that the marks of the second half of the drawing are drawn faster with more confidence and yet probably with greater effect helps the overall package of marks, creates more variety in what we're looking at. So just now starting to stand back sometimes. Occasionally I stand up and I look at the drawing through the camera, through my own iPhone camera, so it's pretty easy to see. And that just lets me see the whole thing shrunk in smaller. That sometimes lets me see things that aren't working with perspective angles that aren't correct, or where the values are all a bit the same or too different, and then I can make adjustments to that. So if you do record, that's something you can do. And even if you don't record, you can record it simply to have the chance to look at it at various stages of the drawing process. You don't need to keep the video afterwards and use up memory if that's what you're using it for. So now I'm adding a little extra to the top to try and get a more varied silhouette so it's not quite just so rounded, because in fact that does reflect the shrub more. And now I'm really working pretty fast. This took me under 30 minutes, about 25 minutes to draw in real time, and you're watching it at 3 times the normal speed. Well, what do you think? G'day, I'm Stephen Travis. Look, I really enjoy drawing foliage. Normally I draw it on a larger scale, but it is interesting to come in much closer than I would normally do with a tree, where individual leaves really are a necessity to be drawn in part. It's perhaps a slightly different way of thinking to to draw a small leafy shrub than drawing a large tree that we're looking at from some distance back. If you're interested in seeing how this approach works with larger trees seen from a variety of distances, then why not check out my channel Drawing Trees playlist, and this reference photo will be on my channel community page if you'd like to have a go drawing this particular leafy shrub yourself. It's a great way to brush up skills that are very useful in other subjects, other contexts as well. But in the end, whatever you draw, leaves or no leaves, from close or far away, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.